Hey, this is Lena from the Work Stoppage Podcast. We're a proud part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, more than 200 labor radio and podcast shows across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where the people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
Trump takes aim at organized labor. The Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers don't tell the whole story. And Jeff Bezos has another union to worry about. I'm Harold Phillips, and this is Labor Week for January 31st, 2025, powered by the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
Come on, you toilers that work for wages. Come from every land, trying to fight and band in one union, brand them for the workers. We'll make upon this earth a paradise when their slaves get wise and organized.
Welcome to another episode of Labor Week, featuring a roundup of the top worker and organized labor news from the past week. You'll find links to the articles I mention at laborweek.org. Just look up the episode in the episodes list. President Donald Trump made a direct attack on organized labor this week when he fired National Labor Relations Board General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo via email late on Monday. Trump also fired NLRB Chair Gwen Wilcox, which is a big problem. As Bloomberg notes in its story on the firings, federal law states that NLRB members can only be fired for neglect or malfeasance. Wilcox was the NLRB's chair for the final days of the Biden administration and was slated to remain a labor board member until 2028. Reuters reports that the board already had 2 vacancies, so the removal of Wilcox leaves it without a quorum of 3 members to issue decisions, even in routine cases. The board reviews rulings by in-house judges and cases brought by the general counsel. Until enough members are seated on the board, those orders can't be enforced, and hundreds of cases are pending. In a statement, Abruzzo said, quote, "We have accomplished so much through our robust education, protection, and enforcement efforts, including empowering workers to collectively seek improved wages, benefits, and working conditions from their employers. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. So, if the agency does not fully effectuate its congressional mandate in the future as we did during my tenure, I expect that workers, with assistance from their advocates, will take matters into their own hands in order to get well-deserved dignity and respect in the workplace, as well as a fair share of the significant value they add to their employers' operations." End quote. Abruzzo gets it, folks. That's why she was such a great general counsel for the NLRB. No matter what happens at the NLRB, the power is in the workers' hands. Remember, when we come together, we're unstoppable. On the same day news of Trump's NLRB firings broke, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released its annual report on union membership. While the agency said the percentage of wage and salary workers who were members of unions in 2024 was little changed from the prior year, that percentage still slipped to a record low 9.9%. In response to the numbers, AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler said in a statement, "Today's BLS numbers don't begin to tell the real story of the desire workers have to join a union. The number of union elections has doubled since 2021, boosted by efforts from the previous Biden administration to give workers a fair shot at joining a union. In 2024 alone, there were nearly 1,800 union elections, with workers winning the vast majority. Many of these victories are not reflected in the numbers released today because employers are exploiting a broken system to delay bargaining a first contract." The Economic Policy Institute goes a step further, saying in its report on the 2024 BLS numbers that despite strong public support and increased worker organizing, we have yet to see this momentum translate into higher unionization rates. It's worth noting that the current trend is still unfolding. It takes time to organize and win union elections. So, not all union activity from the last couple of years will have translated into increased unionization yet. But even more importantly, weaknesses in current U.S. labor law make it harder for workers to join unions and bargain collectively over better pay, benefits, and working conditions. The reality, folks, is that cumulative numbers don't tell the whole story. Even though many looked at Tuesday's BLS report as dire news for the labor movement, the AFL-CIO's Department of Public Employees reported that the number of professional workers, like architects, law clerks, reporters, social workers, in unions increased by 32,000. And the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, or AFSCME, reported that tens of thousands of new members joined its union family in 2024. Remember, the BLS numbers just count the number of salaried employees who are working under a union contract. They don't include the thousands who have organized and are still waiting for that union election or to bargain their first contract. Don't count the labor movement out just yet. Some of those workers waiting to finalize that first contract are the thousands of Starbucks workers who have unionized with Starbucks Workers United over the past 5 years. Starbucks workers have racked up a string of union election wins since they began organizing in 2021. But negotiating that first contract has been difficult, to say the least. We may be seeing some movement, though. Thursday, the union and the company put out a joint statement saying that the two sides have agreed to bring in an outside mediator for contract negotiations in an effort to revive stalled talks. According to Bloomberg, Starbucks and the union reported substantial progress in their negotiating sessions, but talks broke down at the end of 2024 over the issue of pay. The union has said that Starbucks was offering no immediate raises and future pay hikes of only 1.5% a year, while the company has said the union made unsustainable proposals. Hey, call me crazy, but if Starbucks can't pay the people who make the products that make them money enough to live on, well, sounds to me like it's the business that isn't sustainable, not the workers' proposals. Hopefully the mediator will help bring the two sides together to make a deal, and the thousands of Starbucks workers who've joined Starbucks Workers United, they'll be included in next year's BLS numbers. Another group of workers who are going to start negotiating their first contract with a massive corporation? Whole Foods workers in Philadelphia, who just voted to unionize. Whole Foods is, of course, owned by retail giant Amazon. WHYY reports that the preliminary union election results on Monday night showed that out of nearly 300 eligible workers at Philadelphia's Center City store, 230 cast ballots, 130 voted in favor of joining United Food and Commercial Workers Local 1776. As Forbes notes, more unionization at Whole Foods may follow this win as public opinion has turned overwhelmingly positive towards unions. Whole Foods workers are looking for at least $17 per hour, more affordable health care benefits with lower minimums, and improved retirement benefits. They've also complained about how Amazon's frenetic pace of work has rubbed off at Whole Foods, taking a physical and emotional toll on employees. And the Whole Foods workers felt an, quote, extra layer of consternation, end quote, with the company's ownership by billionaire Jeff Bezos. So, in spite of well-documented union busting, Amazon has one unionized warehouse in Staten Island, a unionized Whole Foods in Philadelphia, another warehouse in North Carolina voting on unionization next month, and an ongoing campaign by the Teamsters to unionize Amazon. Yeah, I think this would really be a good time for Bezos and his pals at Amazon to just voluntarily start recognizing their employees' right to come together and stop the union busting. Yeah, I'm thinking this trend, it's probably going to continue. Why fight it, Jeff? Those BLS numbers I mentioned earlier pointed out that non-union workers make about 85% of the pay that union workers make. But want another example of how much it pays to be part of a union? Just take a look at the news that came out of Detroit on Tuesday. GM has announced that it will be delivering a record profit share to UAW members. Detroit News reports that the automaker will be giving up to $14,500 this year to about 48,000 eligible hourly workers. You might remember that during the contract negotiations with GM in 2023, that eventually led to a strike until a deal was reached, the United Auto Workers, or UAW, retained its profit-sharing formula with GM and also negotiated profit-sharing payouts for temporary employees. Well, those negotiations resulted in what GM CEO Mary Barra says is a payment, quote, equal to more than 2 months of extra pay on average for our UAW-represented team, end quote. See? Standing together with your fellow workers doesn't just feel good. It actually pays off. And you can love football. Sorry, Philadelphia Eagles fans, I'm talking about the game people play with their feet that the rest of the world calls football. But you can still hate FIFA. On Monday, The Guardian reported that the World Football Governing Body rejected calls by the African Regional Organization of the International Trade Union Confederation, or ITUC Africa, for an independent monitor to assess migrant workers' conditions in Saudi Arabia in the build-up to the 2034 World Cup. ITUC Africa made the request to FIFA last month in response to what it described as Saudi Arabia's alarming record on human rights. It called on FIFA to make a number of specific interventions, including the end of the kafala system of labor and allowing independent monitors to keep watch over workers' conditions. In response, however, FIFA says measures currently in place are sufficient, claiming it mandates hosts to, quote, uphold the respective duties and responsibilities under international human rights standards in all activities associated with the tournament, unquote. So, it's basically another industry can regulate itself situation. Now, let's take a look at some of the stories I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the coming weeks. I'm recording this at 2:03 on Friday, January 31st, and the Teamsters Master Agreement with warehouse retailer Costco is set to expire at the end of the day today. As we reported last week, Teamsters members at Costco have authorized a strike if that company doesn't come to an agreement with the union today. It seems that no matter what happens at the end of the day today, Costco doesn't want more of its stores to unionize, because today, Costco CEO Ron Vacris announced pay increases for its non-unionized workers over the next 3 years. NPR reports that in March, hourly wages for store clerks and assistants at the top of the pay scale will go up by $1 to $30.20 an hour, and rise an additional $1 each year after that. Wages for entry-level workers will increase by 50 cents to $20 an hour. Costco Teamsters spokesperson Matthew McQuaid said the company wouldn't be raising pay if not for the union's pressure, and, quote, Costco is still shorting their workers because non-union workers lack the retirement security of a defined benefit pension plan and the job protections that come with a union contract. End quote. I'll be watching closely to see what happens at the end of the day today, but as you know, I post my show at the end of the week. If you want fresh news about what finally ends up happening at Costco today and tomorrow, check in with my fellow Labor Radio Podcast Network members at Work Stoppage. Their show drops on Tuesdays, and I'm sure they'll be telling you all about what happens. You'll find a link to their show on the episode page at laborweek.org. Before we go, let's take a look at some of the events in labor history that occurred over the past week. Remember the United Food and Commercial Workers that the Philadelphia Whole Foods workers unionized with? Well, January 26th marks the founding of the Amalgamated Meat Cutters and Butcher Workmen of North America in 1897. One of the forerunners of today's UFCW. On January 27, 1850, the first president of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, an admittedly problematic figure in labor history, was born. Check the link on the episode page at laborweek.org to find out more about what makes Gompers so great and not so great. American organizer Elizabeth Gurley Flynn was born on January 28, 1917, and on January 31, 1938, mostly Latina pecan shellers at the Southern Pecan Shelling Company in Texas went on strike against low wages and won that strike a month later. And that's Labor Week for January 31st, 2025. Was there a story I should have added to my top labor news roundup? Let me know at news@laborweek.org. Follow Labor Week on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Twitter @Labor Week for the latest updates throughout the week. As always, you'll find links to the articles mentioned in this episode of Labor Week at laborweek.org. Just look up the episode in the episodes list. Labor Week is produced and edited by me, Harold Phillips, under a SAG-AFTRA Micropod Agreement. Labor Week is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. with a directory of over 200 labor radio shows and podcasts aimed at working people just like you. Find out more about the network and more labor radio shows and podcasts at laborradionetwork.org. Our music is from Batitudes, Joe Hill Punk Exposure. Find out more about Batitudes at facebook.com/Batitudes. Check the link in our show notes. And remember what Liz Shuler said this week. Public approval for unions is at a 70-year high because in an economy that continues to heavily tilt to the wealthy few and leaves workers behind, the only way to get ahead is by joining together. Keep standing up and keep standing together, brothers, sisters, and siblings. I'll see you soon.